My name is Andrew Trahan. Today I'm going to show you how to put together a computer, to assemble it. Now first, to start to put together a computer, you're going to need all the proper parts, which would be your RAM right here, your RAM, you'll need a video card, you'll need a hard drive, you'll need a CPU, this little thing. You'll also need a CPU fan, you'll need a case and a power supply for your to start off your build. Now, according to Dan Garzino's article, the most expensive parts would be your CPU and your graphics card. Now, you can pick your graphics card and CPU based off of what you need to do. If you need more processing power, you're going to want a better CPU. If you want to play video games or watch really high definition movies or play on virtual reality, you're going to need a better graphics card. Now, for your RAM, you can have anywhere from 4 gigabytes to 32 to 128 gigabytes. You'll need 2 sticks usually. That way they run in dual. Most computers you'll need dual. You also need a motherboard, which is this big red circuit board right here. Whenever you pick your motherboard and power supply, you'll need to make sure that your power supply will be able to power all your equipment, your hard drive and all that. Now, whenever you pick your motherboard, you need to match it to what kind of RAM you get and what kind of CPU you get, because they have a CPU socket right here, and that'll need to fit in there. Now, your hard drive, you can either get a hard drive, which is HDD, or a solid state drive, which is an SSD. Right here we have a hard drive. It has a spinning disk in it. A solid state drive has no moving parts at all. Solid state drives are usually faster, but they're a lot more expensive, so depending on how much your budget is for your PC, it depends on which one you would want to get. CPU fan, you can use the one that comes with the CPU, like this one, and they'll already have like the thermal paste applied to it, so you won't need to buy any. You'll also need thermal paste for this, that way it won't overheat. And you'll also need some tools for it. Now, your tools, after you have all your parts, you'll need to get the tools for it, which will usually require, most PCs require a Phillips head or a screw head, like a little flat blade head. On this one right here, it's mainly Phillips. So, yeah. You'll also need to match your case to what kind of motherboard and power supply you get. Some power supplies only hook up on the top, and some only hook up on the bottom, so you'll need to figure out which one you'll get. Now, your motherboard, you'll need to match the case to it, because there's 3 types of motherboards. There's an ATX, which is the bigger one, the biggest one you can get. There's also an ATX mid, which is the middle one, and then there's an ATX mini. And here there's an ATX mini, which is small. I think this case can go all the way up to an ATX mid. Most cases that are about this size go up to an ATX mid. There are bigger cases that get about this big, that are ATX regular size. Those are the really big ones. And now for your tools, you'll also need an anti-static band. I don't have one of those right now, but it's a little metal band that you put around your arm and you attach it to your case. It'll keep you from static electricity from building up. So whenever you touch your case, you can touch any electronic part, you could fry it, because it'll jump from your fingertips to your motherboard and short circuit almost everything on it, and that will ruin it, and you don't want that to happen. So you get a band, or if you don't want to get the band, you can just touch your case and it'll take all the static electricity off of you. Now, according to Cody East, you also want to get different thermal paste than this and the anti-static band, because it's a lot safer and easier to do. The thermal paste that usually comes on the CPU, he says, isn't that great, so you may want to get some different ones, but that's all up to you. This is just the regular. It just worked fine on this. Now, whenever you start to build it, what you want to do is take this and take your CPU, and on your CPU there's a little gold triangle in the corner. It'll match up to another gold triangle on there. Now, whenever you put that on there, you take the CPU and you gently put it on there, on the CPU socket, and you take there's a little lever. You take the lever and you close it, and it'll push down on the CPU. You don't want to push on the CPU itself because you can damage it, and if you bend any of these little pins on it, it'll ruin the CPU completely. You also don't want to touch the pins because it'll also ruin the CPU. And then after you've done that, you want to take the CPU fan, and then you just, for this one, they already have the brackets to hold it on there already screwed on. So you would just take this and press it on there, and then you could just bend these little tabs down, and it'll click right in. Most of them nowadays are just like push on. They'll just clip into the actual motherboard itself, and there's no need for that. You'll also want to get the manual for whenever you put in your actual motherboard next, because there's screws on here that match up to other screws, and you want to be able to put the right ones on, because if you don't, it'll not ground correctly, and it could send electricity, something bad could happen, and it'll fry the whole motherboard again and ruin it. You'll also want to check out what these wires are for. There's different pins and connectors on here that you'll need to put on correctly in order for it to turn on and power up everything correctly without overdoing it. Then you want to put your hard drive in. It'll just slide into one of these, and you can screw them in. Sometimes it'll just slide in. This one right here, it slides in, it clips in, and you screw it in. You'll also, then you'll take your RAM right here, and you'll put it into these little RAM sockets. You just push them in, and these right here will just clip on, and it'll lock it in place. If you have multiples, this one only has 2. If you have like 4, you want to put them in alternating. If you don't have 4 and you only have 2, it'll be fine, but you want to do that for the airflow. That way it doesn't overheat the computer. Next is your graphics card. You take your graphics card and you put it into one of these PCI slots. You want to figure out which one's the correct one, so refer to your owner's manual. Then all you got to do is the same thing with the RAM. You just push it in and it'll clip right on, and it'll be okay. And then you take all your wires and you wire up everything correctly. This is where you'll need slip ties in order to take all your wires that aren't used, because not all of them will be used, and you just slip tie them together and you just move them out the way. It'll make for proper airflow. That way, again, it doesn't overheat. And the reason why you want to build your own computer is because in Matthew Murray's article, the only way to have the best computer for you and what your needs are is to build your own. That way, it'll have the great processing abilities and graphics capabilities. And yes,